What's up, everyone, and welcome to a special episode of our weekly Q&A, 20 questions all about the Book of Boba Fett. But real quick, before we get to questions, we need to send a shout out and a thank you to Cody Lindblom and Sky Forceland, both of whom joined our Patreon this past week as Jedi Masters. And thank you so much to both of you. That is a crazy level of support, and we really, really appreciate it.
For our first question, we've got a kind of a hot topic here. Immortal Soldier, Rick Villanueva, Brock Montori, and Luminous Being all want to know, is Cad Bane really dead?
I think I'm probably going to do a full video on this and break down both sides of the argument. I think that for now he is, but they have definitely left it open for him to not be.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it too. I figured, like right after watching the episode, I was like, oh yeah, he's dead. He got stabbed in the chest and had this like big dramatic death scene. Where the subtitles say, like, the life drains from him, or the descriptive audio. Right. But, yeah, then people started pointing out the beeping and the little blinking light on his chest. And it's like, I think for now he's dead until they want to bring him back for something.
Yeah, like, the blinking light is definitely something they put in there on purpose. And again, the descriptive audio says, it like calls it out. There's a blinking red light on his chest. So I think it's something they did on purpose, just in case they decide to bring Cad Bane back down the line. But for now, I think that he is dead. And I kind of think he should be, because I really liked the end to his story, and that it concluded in a duel with Boba Fett. I really like what it means thematically, and the whole thing of like, I knew you were a killer, and then like Boba Fett does kill him, and I think that's important. And then if it winds up that he's like, no, just kidding, I wasn't dead, and that kind of undoes that little moment of Boba's story. I don't know, it just seems like a weird thing to go back and forth on, but I do think this is Star Wars, and they're trying to keep their doors open if they so choose.
Yeah, it's like, do we really want to give Cad Bane the Palpatine treatment and just have that open end, like, oh, he could come back? But
this at least feels a little more open-ended than Palpatine being thrown down a pit and exploding.
Sure.
Or Darth Maul getting cut in half. It's like, I think they are trying to be like, we might want to bring him back, so let's go ahead and set up a possible way for him to have survived. Whatever that beeping means. And they're like, we'll explain that later.
Yeah.
And they can be like, look, we set it up from the beginning.
So there are a couple of theories on what the beeping does actually mean. Do you have any theories on that? I have a theory.
Go ahead.
That it's maybe like his air supply, whatever those things are that were in his cheeks. Like, if that gets messed up, maybe that's what the beeping is. So maybe that means he is actually dead. But I don't know.
It's basically like a little emergency, like, hey, something's wrong with your vitals.
Yeah.
It's like,
that's
the
my
system
way
is like, you're dead, and we're just beeping to let you know that.
That's my way of rationalizing that he is in fact dead.
Right, and it comes on after he is stabbed, and after he receives a potentially mortal wound. But it could be a little fail-safe device to reach out to his droid, Toto 360, and Toto can come in and pull him out of the desert and take care of him.
I certainly wouldn't say no to seeing Toto.
Yeah, that would have been fun. So, for now, I'm going to say Cad Bane is probably dead. But if down the line he comes back in a future story, I will not be that surprised.
Eli H.S. asks if Cad Bane could still appear in future stories even if he's dead.
Right, and Eli is specifically talking about, Kenobi or Andor or any of those stories that take place earlier in the timeline, where it's like, yeah, even if he is definitely dead at this point, there are still chances to see him in live action. I don't know that we have to. I don't know that we need to see Cad Bane in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, even though they also had a history together in the Clone Wars. Andor makes less sense to me, but you never know. They could run into some bounty hunters or something.
I think the thing that makes the most sense here is if we were to see him in the Bad Batch Season 2 with a young Boba Fett and see kind of a little bit behind what their history actually is.
Right. I definitely think we're going to see more of him in animation. I'm not quite so confident about live action, but again, like there are easy possibilities here because he is alive during that whole time period. And they've made the costume, so
yeah, we didn't think we would see Ahsoka in the Book of Boba Fett, but here we are.
Right.
Same with Luke.
They could certainly find a way. I think I would be a little bit like, okay, now this is still feeling incredibly connected, where it's like we just got Cad Bane in the Book of Boba Fett, and now he's going to be in Kenobi and Andor. Like that seems like a little much, but if they find a good story reason for it, I'll get on board.
Ben and GeoMU both want to know if the season finale made the Clone Wars duel between Boba Fett and Cad Bane canon.
I think so. I mean, I think it was already made canon by the Bad Batch, because that's the first time we saw that metal plate on Cad Bane's head.
Yeah. I just, like, some of the dialogue in the finale, in that duel scene, confused me, because Cad Bane says, you know, I'm still faster than you, and Boba says, yes, but I have armor. So, like, that made me think, like, did the last time they dueled, he didn't have armor? I don't know.
No, I think that he was just pointing out, I still have armor. I mean, it's more thematic, I think, showing the differences between Cad Bane's alone and Boba Fett's armor is, like, literal, but also I have a tribe of people willing to help me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what that means on a metaphorical level, but at least in the unfinished arc, he had the helmet on. That's why he got the dent. So they could always change that if they ever decide to do that arc, but no, I don't think that really means anything. And the fact that they referenced, you know, I have one final lesson for you, like, yeah, that was the whole point or part of that arc is Cad Bane teaching Boba Fett how to be a better bounty hunter.
Yeah, I just wish that we had gotten some kind of recognition or line during the duel, like specifically referencing that last duel, and just making it known that, like, yes, that happened, and that's why we got the dent, and that's why you have the plate in your head.
Right. It could have been cool. Since he takes the helmet off of Boba Fett anyway, he could have said something like, don't wear your helmet this time, you coward, or, like, try to goad him into removing the armor, basically, to even things out. That could have been fun.
Diabologist asks if Cad Bane ever worked for the Empire.
So yeah, this has come up a couple times because he has that line in Chapter 6 about how Boba Fett was a cold-blooded killer who worked with the Empire. And I don't think that means what a lot of people are saying that it means. Like, oh, Cad Bane never worked for the Empire. It's like, no, he didn't care. He'd go wherever the credits were. He's just trying to tell Cobb Vanth that Boba Fett's not a good person, and you shouldn't be on his side. He's not saying, like, oh, I'm so morally superior to Boba Fett because I didn't work with the Empire. It's like, dude, you worked with the Sith. Come on.
Yeah. And, like, Cobb Vanth obviously doesn't know who he is, so even if he was trying to imply that he never worked for them, Cobb Vanth wouldn't know either way.
Right. The whole point about that line, and then later when he's in Chapter 7, he's like, I always knew you were still a killer. He's saying, like, we're the same. The whole point of having them fight is because Cad Bane hasn't changed, and Boba Fett is trying to. And he's like, you haven't changed, and you never will change. You're always going to be just like me. It's not like he's trying to put himself on a moral high ground. He's just trying to remind Boba Fett that they're still on the same level.
Michael Baroob wants to know why Boba Fett proved Cad Bane right by potentially killing him.
Yeah, I think that's because his journey is not over. I think that he is trying to change and trying to be better, but we see multiple times throughout his episodes that he'll still get those crazy eyes, and he'll still stab someone or hit him with a club or shoot a ton of speed bikers for revenge.
Yeah, I think earlier in the episode we see Finnick come in and say, look, you know, you're emotional right now. Let's not do this right now. He's still obviously emotional and, like, has all this complicated history with Cad Bane, and he let that kind of get to him.
Yeah, I think it is very purposeful that right after he kills Cad Bane, potentially, we cut to the Rancor running amok around Mos Espa. And to me, like in chapter 3, I was like, the Rancor is symbolic of Boba Fett. They are very similar. And so Boba Fett kills Cad Bane, and then the Rancor is running around. And to me, that's like, you know, the animal inside of Boba Fett got out. But it's okay. Like, Grogu calms it down with balance. Like, it's not the end of the world. Boba Fett slipped up, and he probably will continue to slip up, but he still can change, even if he did prove Cad Bane right in this moment.
So what you're saying is Grogu will be Boba's therapist.
Yeah, I mean, I think he can heal all wounds.
Robert Miller asks why the regular citizens didn't join the fight to defend Mos Espa.
Yeah, it's funny. We were talking about that in our live stream about how you had to have heard that whole battle, and then we turn a corner and there's still people with their fruit carts like, oh no, like, why didn't you run earlier? I think that the mods are basically meant to represent like the normal people of Mos Espa, the citizens. And yeah, it would have been cool to see other people, kind of like Freetown, stand up and fight for their city. I would guess that it might have been more of a budgetary thing. It's like they had some extras to play little bit parts here or there, like fruit vendors. Mm-hmm. But to have a bunch of people join the fight, that's a lot of people on screen.
Yeah. It could also be that, like, they see what's going on. They may not have weapons or anything. They may not have the means to help and fight.
Throw their fruit.
They could throw their fruit. I don't know how much that would help. But, like, we learn earlier in the season that there's no work in the town, and, you know, the town people are, like, struggling. So maybe they're just like, well, I guess I'll go pack a bag. The city's gone to crap.
Yeah. And Pelly pointed out that, like, everyone's afraid of the Pikes. And so, yeah, it might have been kind of that moment where they needed a spark of hope. And that's why they didn't join in the fight. I still think it would have been cool if they did. And I still think it may have been a budgetary thing, because that whole fight to me felt a little, like, small in scale. But we talked about how it's not an animated show. The Clone Wars had these massive scope fights because it's a bunch of animated clones fighting animated battle droids. And you can put as many of them as you want on screen. You don't have to pay every individual member of that army.
Yeah, it's definitely harder for them to make these things look so much larger scale. Like, they keep calling it this syndicate war, but then what we get in the finale just doesn't look large enough to be called a syndicate war.
Right. They keep saying, like, we're going to war. And I'm like, it's like a little skirmish. Oh, yeah. you can call this the Battle for Mos Espa or something, but yeah. I wouldn't call that like a war between syndicates.
They need the word war because it's like, yeah, people rally when you hear like, let's go to this small battle.
Right.
It's like, we can touch that up a bit. Hiramatsu wants to know why Boba Fett cared so much about ruling Tatooine after his Tusken tribe was killed.
I do still think that's something that they never fully clearly addressed. And even when Cad Bane is like, what's your angle? I still don't think Boba Fett had like a really good, clear answer. So in my mind, I think he just admired the Tuskens and the chief. And he's like, that's how it should be. I want to be a part of a community. I don't want to keep just living life alone. So I think his goal was to just, I guess I'll be a crime lord, a daimyo, because that's kind of in my wheelhouse, and I'll just get people to join me, and I'll do my best to rule favorably. If we get a season 2, maybe it will continue to evolve, and he's like, crime lord isn't really the best title for me. Like, maybe I should aspire to be something better.
Yeah.
But I agree. His motivations are a little unclear.
Yeah, I think he, in every sense, went back to his old ways. So if you think about him in Return of the Jedi, he was working for Jabba, spending time at Jabba's palace. He's had the line, Jabba ruled with fear. So that was all he knew before the Tuskens. So he wanted to make things better, but also like be in charge like Jabba was.
Yeah, this is another little connection we could make with the Luke episode, where we've talked about how Luke is kind of just doing his best, He doesn't know how to restart the Jedi Order, so he's just falling back on what they used to do, when that might not be the best way. So it could be similar, where Boba Fett's like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know exactly what I should be doing. I just know what my end goal is, and that's to have, like, a tribe again.
Sean Fitzgerald asks if fans projected too much onto Boba Fett before the series began.
Yes.
Fans have been doing that since we knew who Boba Fett was.
Yeah, like, I was thinking, it's kind of interesting the way Boba Fett is kind of a little microcosm of Star Wars, where it's the whole thing repeated, but on a smaller level, where everyone kind of has their own view of Star Wars and what they appreciate about it. And Boba Fett has become the same because, first of all, he's a masked character, so it's easy to, like, insert whatever you want onto that. He was so mysterious into the original trilogy that, we could put whatever personality we wanted into him. And then as story came more and more fleshed out, he was in Attack of the Clones and the Clone Wars, and people had already projected a completely different image of Boba Fett in their mind. And now something concrete happens and they're like, I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people really pushed back against all that stuff. And I think that just keeps going, where now there's prequel fans who grew up with all that, and Clone Wars fans who are like, yeah, that's Boba Fett.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just this weird thing where a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on Boba Fett and spent so much time with him in the prequels or the Clone Wars or in Legends that now that we're saying something concrete and definite again, people are like, well, that's not what I thought.
Yeah. Well, also, like, Star Wars in general is, it's a way for people to escape real life. It's, and the escapism of it, people don't want to see a character that they've loved for years and years and years have, like, real life trauma and PTSD and, like, see them struggle and then, like, have to change or want to change. It's a lot to take on to see a character like that change so much. I mean, look what happened with Luke in The Last Jedi. Yeah. Everybody freaked out because Luke was so drastically different. So it's going to continue to happen with these beloved characters that we've known for so long. So that's why I'm like, please, let's get some new stories, new characters that people aren't so attached to already.
Yeah, Boba Fett and Luke Skywalker obviously are two people that we spent a lot of time with in Legends after Return of the Jedi. So that's another thing where just even I had these expectations of, like, well, this is how he was in the old books, but that's not the story they're telling anymore because those books were written before Attack of the Clones. So now they're coming in and they're saying, like, let's look at everything Boba Fett in Star Wars, and we're going to wrap it all together and really explore this character as George Lucas set him up to be, and without all of the other legend stories that, even though I really, really enjoyed them growing up, it's like that's not the story they're telling anymore. And very similar to what happened with Luke in The Last Jedi, I think.
Grogu wants to know what the significance of the theme song getting lyrics was in the season finale credits.
I guess my initial reaction would be that, like, his journey is complete-ish. I just said that it's not, and I don't think that it is, like, his moral journey, but he at least, became a chief, or whatever his goal was with Mos Espa. He did gain that respect.
Yeah. It makes me think, because the theme music sounds so tribal, it makes me think of the Tusken tribe. So the finale having his name actually in it tells me that, like, he finally found a balance of being who Boba Fett was and what the Tuskens have given him, the lessons that he's learned from the Tuskens. After this whole first season, he found the balance between the two. And so now his name is part of that tribal song.
You just gave me chills. I love that. Yeah, I think that's great. Because we've been talking about the potential of him maybe giving up the armor in favor of the Tusken robes and the Gaffy stick. But yeah, he didn't do that, but he did still defeat Cad Bane with the Gaffy stick, the symbol of his tribe that he chose. And he was wearing his armor. And yeah, he did find kind of a marriage between both of those belief systems. So yeah, now we've got his name mixed in with that tribal music. Yeah, I think that's perfect.
Mitchell Mueller asks, what sick upgrade Cobb Vanth is going to get?
First of all, I'm like, Cobb just got shot in the shoulder. I don't know what exactly he needs, especially if he's in Bacta. We made this joke on the live stream where it's like, does Thundercat just wander around to anyone who's hurt and just give them upgrades whether they want it or not?
Yeah.
But maybe he got shot in such a way that it's like and he wasn't in Bacta fast enough, so his arm is just dead. And so I would guess maybe a new arm.
What's that baseball movie where the kid breaks his arm and then he's
Rookie
really
of the Year?
This is a Rookie of the Year moment. He's gonna get like a new arm and he's gonna literally be the fastest draw.
Again.
You're
crushing it today. Oh, I love that. Where it's like he is unbeatable.
We are going to get Rookie of the Year in Star Wars with Cobb Vanth.
I love that. Mm-hmm.
Biscuit wants to know if cyborg Cobb Vanth will be more or less sexy than regular Cobb Vanth. Well,
I mean, he's a perfect specimen. I don't know that you could do anything to make him more or less anything. He'll be perfect in my eyes forever. Robot arm or not.
A little,
At this point, Molly made a joke that was inappropriate for our younger listeners.
Maybe we'll cut that out. But in all seriousness, I think the same, maybe even a little bit more sexy, because nothing's sexier than, despite a bruised ego and a very bruised body, seeing a man bounce back and not let that affect them.
Honestly, I was like, I don't think there's any addition they could make to RoboCobb that would make me think differently. But then you said the thing about him like literally being the fastest draw in the galaxy and that's pretty cool.
Jacob Fuentes asks if we'll ever see the Hutt twins return in live action.
I think so. There was a line that Boba Fett said when they first left that it makes sense for them to want to just sit back and let their enemies fight each other. So I wouldn't be surprised that if there's a second season, the enemies could be the Hutts coming back, being like, all right, the Pikes are out of the way, now you have to deal with us.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the Hutts are going to get involved at this point, knowing once they find out what went down and that the Pikes were driven out of Tatooine. But they also had the line about, like, Tatooine's a garbage planet anyways, basically, so I can't say for sure.
That, to me, is just, like, an angry kid being like, I didn't want to play with that anyway.
Yeah.
I'm going home. Like,
yeah, true.
I think they want their territory back. It's just, right now, they're like, war's bad for business, whatever. You two fight it out, and then we'll come back and we'll kill whoever's left.
Joanna Caspers wants to know if we'll get a second season.
You know, I think so. Before this show even began, I was guessing yes, because the crew jackets, I believe, said, like, Buccaneer Season 1. That was the working title. And usually, if it says Season 1, that would suggest that there's going to be another. But also, they are probably waiting to see what the viewership was like before they announce anything.
Yeah. I think it could be another one of those things that they left open-ended on purpose. I at first was like, oh, there was a post-credits scene with Cobb Vanth, so obviously it's going to get a second season. But then I was like, no, he could just show up in The Mandalorian from now on, and so could Boba Fett. Like, Boba Fett's whole story could just continue to tie into The Mandalorian, and they can go forward without making an actual season 2 of this show. We were talking to our friend Ashton, who is on our other show, Explain It to Me, which is coming back for Moon Knight. And we were talking about Moon Knight
And apparently Oscar Isaac somewhere said that he didn't think Moon Knight was going to go for more than one season. And people were like, oh man, but that doesn't mean Moon Knight's not going to show up in other stuff. And it's kind of the same way where all of these, the Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, probably other series are going to be telling this ongoing story where the characters are going to come in and out. So yeah, they're probably like, maybe we'll do another Book of Boba Fett if we have a story centered around him to tell, or maybe we won't. So yeah, open-ended makes sense.
Connor Fogarty asks what we think is in Boba Fett's future after this show.
Yeah, I think that we kind of touched on this. I hope that he drops the crime lord title, but maybe that's why they keep calling it a daimyo, where it's like that sounds better than just crime lord.
Yeah. Because when Drash, when they first met the mods, she was like, oh, you're just another crime boss like the rest of them. So I think he'll find kind of a happy medium and start cleaning up the town, start making sure that people can get work and that they're not charging too much for water. And inevitably open his bantha farm, which is also going to be a petting zoo. Banthas and rancors and any other cute animals.
I wish I could remember who tweeted it and drew this, but someone did some fan art of him with his bantha and two little baby banthas next to him. So yeah, I do hope he keeps his animal love going, because that has been really fun to watch with the bantha and the rancor. I could see him, like we just said, it's very open-ended, where he did say something like, I don't know if we're cut out for this, like actual leadership thing. And maybe they will give leadership over to Cobb Vanth and they'll go take on Black Sun, or they'll attack the Hutts themselves or something, where it's like, we got to get these crime lords out of here, and they're making life worse for everyone. So maybe they're not going to stop at Tatooine.
I see him also redoing the Sanctuary with his new partner, Max Rebo, who is definitely still alive. Mm-hmm. So the two of them are going to rebuild that place and reopen it. There's going to be a Garsa Fwip statue in remembrance. Yeah, I could see that happening, and Boba and Max just having a great time. Kevin Dragos wants to know why the Armorer didn't take the Darksaber from Din.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think the Armorer actually likes Din. Like, I think she hopes that he'll go in a tone and continue wanting to wield the Darksaber. Like, she called it a worthy weapon for him.
Mm. Yeah, I got the sense that maybe just now is not the time. There's only, a few of them. Maybe she, was planting some seeds to get Din to go to Mandalore and like atone or whatever, but then once she can find the rest of the cultist Mandalorians,
the Children of the Watch, Death Watch, whatever you want to call
them, once they kind of regroup, then that would be a better time to kind of strike, and maybe not her, but like someone else she thinks is worthy could try and take it.
You did make a good point, where I do personally think that she likes Din and didn't want to take it from him, and she's like, he'll come back around. Like, you're not a Mandalorian right now, but you can atone. Go do that, and like keep passing my tests. But I do like something that you suggested, where she could easily take it from him right now. We saw her beating him in combat. But if she did that, only Paz Vizsla would see it.
Right.
If she bides her time and waits until there's an audience and then is like, I'm taking that thing, it's more powerful.
Yeah, she needs people to see her win it in combat, because that's like the whole thing about getting the Darksaber.
That's true. Just show up, be like, I won it. I mean, which technically should work, and then that's what Din said, but still.
Or maybe she specifically wants to win it in front of Bo-Katan.
Really twist that vibro blade.
Ahar asks what Din and Grogu will do next.
I think that Molly suggested this on our live stream discussion that they'll probably just go to Mandalore. I feel like that's the only real lead that we have for them. That's the latest mission that the Armorer gave to Din. So I think that they're going to start heading that direction.
Yeah. They could make a pit stop was it Sorgan?
Again,
just to go visit the kids, and Din can visit that lady that wanted him to stay.
He can be like, hey, I'm already kicked out right now, so here's my face.
Yeah, it's just going to go all in.
What's another sin? I haven't washed myself in the waters yet.
I do think it would be adorable if we got a scene of Din letting Grogu play with the Darksaber.
That is dangerous.
Luke was going to give him a lightsaber.
That's true.
I think he knows how to use it.
All right.
Squeezed wants to know if Grogu returning to Din devalues the end of The Mandalorian Season 2.
Not necessarily. I definitely see that argument. It's weird because I think that it happens really fast. It just feels a little rushed where they're like, okay, here's where we want them to be in The Mandalorian Season 3 and what that story is going to do. So let's just like hurry through their separation.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm like, it just lasted 2 episodes, really? Like, I was kind of looking forward to maybe a season or a while of Season 3, them being apart. But I did get to see what I wanted to see, which was Din kind of going back into old habits, going back to bounty hunting and realizing like, this isn't really working out for me anymore, and my old covert kicked me out. So I did get that. It just happened very quickly.
Yeah, it does kind of take away some of the excitement for Season 3, where it's like, oh, well, yeah, they're back together, and we know a bunch of that stuff already, so... But I don't think it devalues anything, because the point of all of this was always to let Grogu choose, and to give him the opportunity to go with Luke and to train to be a Jedi, and he chose not to, so... And we can't have Grogu just missing from a whole season of a show.
I think we could have. I think that would have been a bold decision. And like that's, at the end of Season 2, you're like, whoa, what are they going to do in the next season? And then the answer is like the exact same thing. Okay.
Yeah.
And we're right back at it. But there's still a lot of stuff I'm excited for, especially with Din and the Darksaber. He's still got his journey that he's going on. And Grogu's along for the ride in that tiny little pod. Like, yeah, I do think it's a little rushed, but I loved seeing them together again. So, oh well.
Oh well. Laser Swords asks if we'll see Luke reflecting on his time with Grogu in the book Shadow of the Sith.
I like that idea, and I bet you it will happen, but it'll be super vague. Like, that book takes place... a while from that point in the timeline. But I think it would be fun to mention, even if it's not by name, just like looking back at, that student that he had for a couple of days before Ben. I think something like that sounds likely.
I would love that.
The Alphabet Squadron books, this is kind of what I'm expecting. The Alphabet Squadron books, Hera is in them a lot, and she talks about Jason a couple times. Jason Syndulla. It's still pretty vague, probably because they're like, we don't want to like put anything down concrete of like what he's up to at this point in time, but they still do mention him. So I think that they could do that, especially since their time together has ended.
Mm-hmm. Ice Phoenix 2 wants to know if the Book of Boba Fett stands on its own, and will the interconnectivity of these shows become an issue in the future?
Not really. Like, I think that the interconnectivity thing, this series really sets some expectations moving forward, where it won't be so jarring or surprising if Din shows up in Ahsoka, or when he shows up, because now I am expecting that. Yeah.
I think it will continue to confuse some people. There's going to be a lot of people tuning in for Mando Season 3 that are like, oh, a lot of stuff happened, and I didn't watch that Boba Fett show. Weird. Oh, well. Like, I don't think most people are going to be bothered by it, but I definitely think it's going to continue to happen and be less and less of an issue.
Yeah. So does the Book of Boba Fett stand on its own? Not really. Like, I wouldn't suggest someone who's never seen Star Wars before. It's like, oh, you gotta watch the Book of Boba Fett. You'll love it. Like, The Mandalorian seems like more of a gateway drug than the Book of Boba Fett, because it ties so closely with everything else that's ever happened in Star Wars, with this specific character that had a few minutes of screen time in the original trilogy and like 5 lines, and the Clone Wars and Attack of the Clones. So all that stuff plays into this. So I would not call it like a just very standalone series in that way.
I think if you have seen the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, and you probably know who Boba Fett is, then that's fine. That's pretty much all you really need. And like going forward, it's going to just be like that for all Disney Plus shows.
Yeah. And I think that's okay that it doesn't stand completely on its own, because you'd probably be hard pressed to find someone where if you showed them a picture of Boba Fett in the helmet, they'd be like, oh, I might not know his name, but I know that's from Star Wars. Mm-hmm. So people are just so familiar with Star Wars in general that we're allowed to have these kind of niche series every now and then.
Ethan Starnes asks what our favorite and least favorite aspects of the show were.
I think my favorite aspect is the fact that, and I mentioned this earlier, but the fact that they took every Boba Fett story from canon and they were like, let's incorporate this into Boba Fett's journey.
Yeah. I think my favorite thing is just his time with the Tuskens and learning to overcome his past trauma, and the fact that they went there with his story. I was really happy to see that. They could have gone further into all that, but they gave me the basics of what I didn't think that they were going to give me for him, and I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I think episode 2 was probably my favorite of the bunch. Mm-hmm. That was really fun. My least favorite aspect, everyone harps on it, but that chase scene, the mod chase scene, it was just too slow. And it was too slow and felt overly goofy at times when compared to the rest of the tone of the show.
Yeah. Kind of along those same lines, but I know it's like vital to his story and to the story that they wanted to tell. I'm just tired of Tatooine.
Yeah.
Like
fair.
The set itself for like the big final battle and for that chase scene, it's just hard to do a lot of stuff. I loved the night scenes in the towns and stuff, but during the day with the like super harsh lighting, it just makes everything else look a little cheap. And I want to explore the galaxy some more.
I think it's wild that if the Kenobi concept art is any indication, we're probably going to spend more time off Tatooine in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series than we did in the Book of Boba Fett. That's crazy. But I am glad that, yeah, it's not another like, and we're on Tatooine for 6 more episodes.
Yeah.
That's all the time we have for questions today. If you want to leave a question for next week's video, just put it in the comments below or sign up for Patreon to join our weekly Q&A discussion. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
And as always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.